Good morning and happy Friday, everyone. It is our monthly Women in Aviation International Connect for our leadership team on webinars. So happy for everyone to be joining us today. And I thank you for giving me your time. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen here and we will get into it. Today, we are going to be talking about we just disagree. The first thing that I want to make sure, can everyone see my screen? Yeah? Okay, perfect. All right, we just disagree. Conflict management and resolution techniques. So one of the great things about being a chapter leader with Women in Aviation International, our concentration, we're really wanting it to be something that you can apply to your entire life. We have chapter leaders at every stage in their lives. Some of them have been through the management routine and they've learned all of these skills. And some of our chapter leaders are younger folks that are just coming into their careers and just learning their paths. So the more leadership tools that we can give you, this is not just for your chapter, this is also for your life in general as you're taking your journey. So we are going to talk about conflict management and resolution techniques. So why are we here? Conflict is an uncomfortable encounter that everyone experiences, particularly leaders. And today we're going to talk about the fundamentals of managing conflict. We're going to go over several different concepts here. The first, we're going to define the concept of conflict management. We are going to identify sources of conflict. We're going to discuss how perceptions can cause conflict. And we'll learn about how to respond to conflict. It is absolutely just a human thing. Conflict is going to happen, whether it's within your workplace or within a volunteer group. Someone is going to have moments of disagreement, and we're going to figure out the best way to handle those moments. So we're going to define our concepts here. The first thing we're going to talk about is conflict. Conflict is any interpersonal situation where individuals perceive that they have incompatibilities. And then we move to conflict management, which is a set of skills, mindsets, and processes for recognizing and resolving conflict. Successful leaders must be able to not only manage and resolve conflict, but also to identify and implement strategies to prevent it. How does this impact you as a chapter leader? Conflict is inevitable, particularly for leaders. The ability to successfully recognize and navigate your conflict is essential for your success. When you are not effectively identifying conflict, it can substantially impact your leadership as well as the health of your chapter. And as our friend here says, the pressure can be quite crippling. There are times that this can be mentally stressful. So let's discuss for a moment. So how would you find conflict management? Is there anyone that has an answer for that or is able to share what their thoughts are on conflict management? No, maybe not. So again, it's a really uncomfortable place. Sometimes you're going to find that conflict management, you're managing this within yourself, between you and another person, or you are going to find yourself as the possibly negotiator, the person that's in the middle and in between, trying to balance the conflict between two parties. So I am going to ask a couple of more questions here. Think about what negative outcomes might be caused by a conflict within a chapter. Are there any situations or scenarios? You can make them up. You don't have to use your own chapter. It's totally fine. But situations that might be causing conflict. I can think of, individuals who maybe are feeling that they've been volunteering more while others have been volunteering less, and there could be a source of conflict there, or someone feels that they should have a specific leadership position within the chapter, but at the moment the chapter doesn't feel like maybe that's the best position. So navigating those conflicts is going to be really, really important. Having someone that disagrees with the way that the chapter is being operated. How do you have those tough conversations?
And we have a few things in the chat.
Oh, there are a few things in the chat. What do we have, Roar?
Communication breakdown and members leaving the chapter.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, those are great examples. Thank you for sharing those. But then what positive outcomes might result as a conflict? Conflict is not always a negative thing. A lot of times, that's how people come up with the brilliant and great ideas when they're working together. You know, I have one idea, you have a different idea, and you know, how do we work together to get to that point? So there can definitely be some positive outcomes, or you can realize that maybe you have volunteers that you didn't realize were available, or you have someone with amazing ideas that you weren't recognizing in the past. So just remember not to always approach a conflict in that it's going to be something negative. It can definitely turn into something positive, particularly when you can get the two sources of conflict together and working in an efficient manner. To understand conflict, you need to understand the sources. Where does conflict come from? And there are three general buckets that we can put conflict into. The first is personal. My personal beliefs, my background, and my personal perceptions are going to play into sources of conflict when I'm looking at a situation. Interpersonal, based on relationship and how we trigger one another. Sometimes we're just not speaking the same language. We're saying the exact same thing, but we're saying it in a different manner. So, you know, what is our relationship? Rory and I work very closely together. So if she's so smart and she is so technically savvy that she'll get really excited and she'll just tell me something, and it may not be in a language that I understand. So I'll ask her, I'll say, hey, can we stop for a second, go back? What I heard you say was this, is that correct? And she can either correct me if I heard it wrong, or she can say, yes, that's exactly what I was saying, and we can move forward with whatever it is that we're talking about. The last one is structural. It can be a part of an organizational foundation, role ambiguity or lack of procedure, lack of clear direction or communication. People just may not understand, or there's something within the organization or within your chapter that maybe we need to fix. Maybe we're not communicating enough. Maybe we're communicating too much, and that's annoying a few people. You know, how do we find that kind of middle balance? That being said, we all have to remember that we are not going to make every human on the planet happy, because we have these personal perceptions, we have these interpersonal perceptions, and then we still struggle with the structural challenges sometimes. The relationship of perception and conflict is so important, and that's something that we need to really keep in mind. Our individual differences in perception are often what underlies a conflict. Our brain's method of making sense of the world can be both our friend and our enemy. And I want to go into a little bit of psychology here. So there's a sheet that I have made here, and if you would like it, a copy of it, I can email it to you as soon as I have access to my email and my files. What we're going to be talking about is the ladder of inference. And this was something, as I was going through my management career, that was extremely helpful for me. It was extremely helpful to realize how humans perceive their world. And the ladder of inference is a model of how humans make sense of the world and can help you step back and understand your reactions to a situation or a conflict. We have the very bottom of the ladder. You'll see observed data and experiences. So we all walk into a room and we see the exact same thing. However, each one of us is going to perceive that room in a different way. We're each going to see different things. So the next rung is, what data am I selecting? What information am I taking out of this situation? And then we go on to the meanings that I create based on my selective observations, the assumptions that I make based on the meanings that I've created, the conclusions that I reach, the beliefs that I have built around the world, the actions that I take based on my beliefs, and then that very top rung is the narrow subjective perch that I am making my conclusions and my decisions on. Now, all of this stuff, all of these rungs happen within seconds. Your brain is processing all of this information and taking it in so fast, and it's applying it to all of those things, you know, in the middle. How are my beliefs affecting? How are my personal assumptions affecting this room that I'm in? I may see an absolutely beautiful piece of art that I think is wonderful, and I'm curious and I'd love to learn more about it. Whereas someone else walks into a room and they see that piece of art and they have maybe a little more knowledge of the history of that piece of art, and they realize that maybe that's a relic that belongs to another culture, and that culture should be the owner of that rather than where that piece of art currently is. And so they're immediately upset about that piece of art and why it's here and where it needs to go, and maybe the implications of how it got here. Where I see a beautiful piece of art and I just want to go look at it, and I think it's so pretty, and you know, that's a very simplified explanation. But remember that while I'm climbing my ladder, you're doing the exact same thing. So my behaviors are going to trigger your behavior and vice versa. This is the beginning of the conflict cycle. We can all see the top and the bottom portions of the ladder. When you're looking at a person, you can see the exact same data that they're observing, and you can see what their reaction is to that data, or what behavior that they are now having with regards to that data. What we can't see is what's occurring in the middle. So when you're trying to resolve a conflict, it's absolutely critical that you look at the middle of the ladder to examine the assumptions of each party and determine how the conflict started. Remember that intent is not always the same as impact. While you have the result of my actions, you may have misinterpreted my intent. You know, one of the things to think about as you're thinking about a conflict, whether it's something in your personal life or something within the chapter, what assumptions may have been made by either party about one another, about our views, about what's going on. You know, examples would be, you know, you have a volunteer that used to be extremely active and has suddenly just dropped off of the face of the planet, and you cannot get a hold of this volunteer. Actually, you know what we're going to use? We're going to use Jessi's computer problems right now. This is the example I'm going to give you. So you all are used to me being pretty darn responsive. I'm usually back to you within a day or two. Right now, my computer has been down and I have no ability to access any of the information that y'all are sending me. So you're not getting an out of office reply from me because I have not had the ability to program an out of office reply. You just know that Jessi's not answering you. Well, what the heck is going on with Jessi? I mean, gosh, she must just not be doing what she's supposed to be doing. Whereas, you know, that could be an assumption that someone is making about me, when in reality, I have computer issues and I just can't get back to someone. So taking that step back and seeing what's going on in other people's worlds, other people's perceptions, that's a very, very important thing. Active listening is key. And as a manager, when I was in my management career, I was very fortunate that my company had a great training program. And this was probably one of the most important things that I took out of this. And I've used this for probably the last 15 years of my management career, is active listening. We have to realize that everyone, not just the person that is in conflict or that is having conflict, everyone perceives their world through what we can call listening filters. You can think of them as filters. And my poor lady here, I tried to put like 18 earmuffs on her so that you can see how those filters grow as you're trying to listen. You know, we're having a conversation about something and my filters are already engaged. Possibly it's a subject that I'm not interested in. Possibly I have some prejudices on the subject because I know I strongly feel one way, whereas you're presenting information to me in a different way, and I'm not going to agree. So I've immediately put that filter back. So I'm not listening. Memories of things that have happened to you in the past or past occurrences that have been similar. Oh gosh, X happened this time, last time that we did this. I know X is going to happen again. So I'm not going to even bother to engage in this conversation because I already know the outcome. Your physical environment. Am I uncomfortable? Is it hot as blazes here in New Mexico? And we're standing outside trying to have a conversation under the hot sun at Girls in Aviation Day, and I'm just miserable. You know, I'm not actively listening to what you have to say because right now I'm concentrating on the fact that I'm not comfortable. And then attitudes. Is it a great day for me? Or is it a day where I am super frustrated and already having a rough day and I can't listen because I'm too involved in what's going on with me personally? Knowing if you're truly listening, because that human brain building in those filters is interpreting all of the information that's coming in and all of your communication that you're having with someone. One of the key components of leadership is to test your assumptions before you take action. As a leader, unless I had an incident that it had to be addressed, if it was an emergency, if it was something that was putting someone in danger, if it was mission critical, then we address the situation immediately. If it was interpersonal, and we could get everyone at least separated and into a calm space, I had a 24-hour policy. And this is something that I taught all of my management team that was working with me for my past career. And it's worked for everyone so far. So hopefully it'll work for you. The 24-hour rule, when you have something that comes to you, sit back and think about it, or something that's stressful, something that's upsetting, conflict, you know, again, going within the chapter, take 24 hours before you address any situation. Because when you are first engaged in conflict, your emotions are high. You're always going to react as an emotional party rather than a neutral party. And you want to approach situations as a neutral party when the emotion has come out of the situation and everyone is able to sit down and have a good conversation. That 24 hours also gives you time to really inspect what the conflict is. You may be hearing situation A from Susie, but as we said, when humans are interpreting their information differently, Jane has a completely different view of what the occurrence was, what the conflict is. So finding out what both parties have to say, because sometimes as much as you trust Susie, Susie's filters and Susie's ladder have possibly clouded her judgment on the situation as being reported. So we need to talk to Jane and see what Jane has seen. And then if there are any witnesses to the event, you may want to talk to them as well. And most of the time, all conflict comes down to simple misunderstanding and different perspectives. Promise. When you can get everyone to sit down at a table and really talk to one another, you can usually come to an agreement. So key components of leadership is asking those questions before you take action. Make sure those questions are open-ended. You don't want anyone to just give you yes and no answers. You really want to try to dig down into what the conflict is and kind of accept some of the responsibility for the conversation on yourself. I heard you say that you really don't like my dog and he's ugly and you hate him and he's my best friend. Can you expand on that for me for a bit, just a little bit? And then you come back and say, no, Jessi, I was trying to say that your dog was a little unruly yesterday. And if you're going to take him into public, I really think that maybe he should have some more training. You know, I'm immediately triggered because you're talking about my dog, and Otis is absolutely my best friend. And I would be very upset because he's a really good boy. But what you're trying to do in reality is say, hey, Jess, I see a potential problem for you. You really need to make sure that Otis goes into some training before he's out in public, because he could present a danger to the public, or which he doesn't, by the way, he's a very good boy, but you know, he could present danger to the public, or, you know, something that he does could end up affecting you poorly. You know, ask for clarification. It's not that hard. And a lot of times we don't do that. We don't say I heard this. We just immediately become triggered and we immediately become offended instead of having those conversations. These conversations are not comfortable, but they are absolutely key to creating relationship. Also, just asking for a little bit of understanding. I heard you say this. Can you help me understand it? Can you help me understand quantum physics, because I really don't get how that works. Make sure that you are all on the same pages. What are some other questions that you might ask? Some other open-ended questions that you could put out there to negate some of the conflicts? I apologize, I can't see the chat. So if there's anything coming up, Rory, would you mind helping me out on that? That's okay. I would challenge you to think of other questions. Think of other ways to approach the situation when you see that conflict coming. And again, remember this slide right here is one of the key things that I took with me in my management career, is just to remember that filter thing. You know, hey, maybe they didn't hear me. They didn't hear my intent on what I meant to say there. When you are resolving conflict, we just talked about neutralizing emotions. Do not approach conflict when emotions are high. Wait till you and your conflict partner, and I'm going to put this between you and another person, because I think it's easier to put ourselves in a place than to sometimes think about that outside event. Wait until you and your conflict partner are both able to approach the conversation objectively, actively listen, and to be empathetic to one another. Empathy is very important when you are dealing with these kind of cases, because again, most of the time conflict arises because someone feels passionate about something. So I need to have empathy and understand that you feel very passionate about this situation. So I need to understand where you're coming from. Be very, very conscientious and aware that emotional reaction to conflict can be identified early. You want to stop the conversation. If you begin to feel any stress or anger at all, just say, you know, I really think that this is a conversation that I would like to think about. If we could table this for a little while, I would really appreciate it. That way you can collect your thoughts and look at that ladder and see where you are on the ladder, and make sure you're looking at the conversation in an objective manner. It is scientifically proven that stress and anger disengage logical thinking. So a lot of times you will come up on an issue that absolutely is one of the silliest things that you've ever heard of, and you've got teammates that are fighting over this thing. And I'm going to use a perfect example. So I think that some of you know that I used to run FBOs, and for one of our particular pieces of machinery, it had kind of like a roll bar on it. Well, one of my gentlemen wanted the roll bar up every time, and some of my gentlemen liked it to be down. The gentlemen, they got into a huge fight and ended up in my office one day because it was absolutely unacceptable. Neither of them, no one could resolve the situation. What's going to happen here? And I said, here's the thing. Why do you feel that this particular piece of equipment needs to have this roll bar up or down? And they each explained their situations. And one of them came and said his idea or his feeling was that having that roll bar up was for safety. And I said, I completely understand. I think that is perfectly logical, perfectly acceptable, and we will never compromise safety ever. So if this is something that makes you feel safe, then this is something that we need to definitely do. But I need to ask you a question. And the gentleman responded, absolutely, no problem. If we're going to do this because this is safety oriented, we're going to have this roll bar up. And I said, do you wear your seatbelt every time you are on this piece of equipment? So if you've ever worked at an FBO, the tugs are equipped with seat belts. However, you are up and down off of that tug so many times that generally you're not putting your seatbelt on. And when I asked him this question, he looked at me and he said, well, no, because I got to get off and on. I've got to go hook everything up, and then I've got to get everything going. And so no, I don't wear the seatbelt because it's really, it's not convenient. And I said, well, if this is a safety issue, we need to talk about wearing our seatbelt every time that we get on there, because the roll bar is actually not going to protect you if that piece of equipment were ever to tip, right? Because you're just going to go right off. You don't have your seatbelt on. That roll bar has done you zero good. And when he looked at me with these eyes of blink, blink, it was just a moment of understanding. And he goes, oh, you know what? The roll bar can stay down. End of story. We just had to put some logic to it, because at that point, whatever little thing, I don't know if it was hot and they were just aggravated, if they had been working really hard and they were tired. I'm not sure what the trigger was, but whatever the trigger was, that is the conflict that came to me, and it was very easily solved once we were able to take anger and stress out of it and put logical thinking back in. Don't hesitate to engage that neutral party. Often this person can help alleviate stress and navigate the conversation, or often as a leader, you're going to find yourself as that neutral party. So as a neutral party, making sure that you understand all sides and you can help them communicate. And again, that what I heard you say was this is really, really important to those conversations, so that they have a chance to explain what their logic and what their thinking is. Because again, often they're really not that far off. It's just perception and communication. When we're resolving conflict, engage with your conflict partner to identify solutions and negotiate resolve. So this is your step 2. You cannot approach one another until you've done step 1. Don't engage, hey, we each need to take some time. Let's come back and revisit this later. But once everyone's calmed down and either you've engaged a neutral party to come in and sit down with you, or maybe each of you have had time to go back and talk to a neutral party and say, hey, I could really use some advice here. A trusted person. We don't want it to be gossip, but we want it to be somebody who's really going to sit down and who's going to tell you the truth about the situation. How am I judging this, and could I be wrong? find that trusted partner in your life and be able to have those conversations. That's also very, very important when you find yourself triggered. So engaging with your partner and identifying your solutions to negotiate a resolution. And then we want to resolve the conflict. In order to prevent future conflict, we need to review our lessons learned and from both the conflict and the resolution. You know, did I come at this conflict with a perception completely outside of where I needed to be? Did I come to this conversation with compassion and empathy? You know what? I didn't the first time. So next time I know that I need to say, hey, you know, I really appreciate this conversation. At the moment, I think that it's getting, that neither of us are communicating well. So why don't we pause and come back after we've had some time to regather our thoughts? And then identify if you need clearly communicated boundaries or rules to be established when you're interacting with this person. Sometimes our personalities just don't mesh, and that's okay. You don't necessarily have to just think that this person is your best friend. You don't have to love them, invite them over for dinner, but you do have to respect this person. And you have to make sure that you're approaching everything that you do with respect. So if you know that I just really, really, really can't communicate with Susie at all, here's what I would like to do in the future. Susie, if we need to do X, Y, or Z, the next time that we need to talk, I would like to make sure that we have a neutral party in the room so that we can make sure that we're communicating and that person can help us if things start to get a little derailed. Or, you know, we both are really grumpy in the morning before we have coffee, and let's make sure that we're not engaging in this kind of discourse before either one of us have had our coffee. You know, whatever those boundaries need to be, they can be very, very simple. Or sometimes somebody just needs to know where you stand. You know, I firmly believe in this, and this is, you know, where I stand. And as we talk about this issue, I would like to make sure that our conversation always remains respectful. The end. So they feel like unnatural conversations. Sometimes they don't feel natural until you practice. This takes some practice. It takes some time. You're not going to do it perfectly every time, because we are human, and that's okay. But we need to understand how to practice and to do better for ourselves and the teams that we are leading as we are engaging in any kind of conflict resolution. Conflict is a natural part of human relationships. An effective leader will identify, manage, and work to resolve conflicts early before they become a larger issue within the chapter. Remember that skilled leaders manage with emotional intelligence. So how is Rory feeling today? Did her computer just bust and she's really frustrated because she can't hear me? You know, is she a little escalated as we are going into a conversation? She gives me the thumbs up. She's fine. Let's continue with this conversation then, because it's going to be a little bit tough. Also telling people, hey, I think that we need to have an honest and open conversation. Can you do that for me? And if we do that, can you really hear me as we are speaking? Those are also really important things to start out a conversation with, because you set the tone. I need to be open and honest with you. Some of the things that I have may be kind of hard to hear, but I need you to listen openly and give me active feedback on the conversation. Address your issues quickly. You're cognizant to handle personal emotions. My personal emotions, I need to keep my emotions in check. I need that 24-hour rule, because Susie just went and made me mad, and I am mad, and I want to be mad because sometimes it feels good to be mad. I don't know why, but our bodies react that way. I'm going to be mad and I want to be mad. And I have to realize that I need that 24 hours to calm myself down, because it is really not a great time for me to engage with Susie when I am this escalated. And you need to take your personal emotions out of any of the interactions. You need to be very careful about being that neutral party. And you need to make sure that you are objective and fair. Again, there's a difference between conversations and gossip. So you want to be very, very careful about how you are speaking about a situation, particularly if you are talking to another party, because you never want that to be interpreted as gossip. And particularly as a leader, you are a trusted party. You are someone who is expected to take this information in and deal with it appropriately. So if it's something, as a leader in your job, if it's something that needs to be escalated to human resources, or go here or there, you're hearing a lot of personal information, and that personal information needs to stay with you, because if people don't trust you, you will never have effective communication. And the last thing that I have here is just a personal exercise that we can run through. Again, I know that a lot of you are at work and you're not able to engage here, but these are some questions that I would really like for you to think about and start practicing today. Think about a time that you were in conflict. It can be within the chapter, it can be within your personal life, with your professional life, and then reflect on that conflict. Was it personal, interpersonal, or structural? Was it me? Was it the relationship that I have with Rory? Or is it, something structural that we need to identify and put a new process in for our work here at Women in Aviation International to make sure that we're both on the same page every time that we're doing something? How did the conflict resolve? Was it a positive outcome, or was it a negative outcome? How do you feel about the situation? And then are you able to take any of the tools that we've learned today with our listening with filters and active listening, and realizing that, looking at our ladder, is there anything that you may have done differently when you were approaching that conflict or helping manage that conflict between two parties? Would you have done anything differently? Will any of these tools help? Because a lot of times I've got my little kitty here and he's saying, oh my gosh, how did I get here? That's exactly how you feel. How did we get here? How are we fighting over a roll bar and a seatbelt? I don't understand that. This seems like such a little thing, and yet everyone has stopped working today because we're angry over a roll bar and a seatbelt. So let's pause and take a moment and see how we could have done something differently. I am so glad that you were all here for the webinar today. Yes, Rory.
We have a comment.
Yeah.
I like the advice to let things cool off for 24 hours, either over email or in a meeting. The prompt, this is something I'd like some time to think about. Can we table this until X, is very helpful. I'm neurodivergent, and in a high emotion scenario, it helps for me to have a script.
Oh,
and you know
what?
what? I've used that. I'll take 24 hours. I've even done it with my kids, which really sends them over the edge.
Oh yeah, they hate that. By the way, if you have kids, they hate that. We are not talking about this now. We are going to talk about it later. I need some time. That is something. My son is also a bit neurodivergent, and that is actually a tool that his therapist has given us as well. And I was like, I already used that. Good for me, But he has given us that tool. This is not something that we are going to address now. We're going to address it later. And you're also setting your personal boundaries there. I'm not going to let this escalate. I don't feel good. This does not feel good to me. I'm going to leave for a little while until we can get to a place where we have a conversation that feels good for both parties. Yeah, that's really good. I'm so glad. I am going to stop sharing so that we can get into conversation. Rory and I are always here to help. You know that. We love hearing from you, and we will do anything that we can to help you along the way. I hope that these tips and tools can be something that you put in your toolbox. And again, you're not only using for your chapter, but you can use these in everyday life. It's really, really a positive way to interact with people. And as a leader, it's a really, really great way to, again, take those things that just don't make sense and understand them, and negate and manage the conflict between two parties. Because most of the time it was something that started as a grain of sand and is now a boulder, and that boulder is not letting us go anywhere. So how's everyone else feeling about this? Do you enjoy the new kind of tone that our leadership webinars have taken? So we're kind of moving into those leadership tools and skills versus just completely WAI centric things. Yeah. Well, good. I hope so. I hope so. These are fun for us to do. So I want to make a quick announcement. Most of you registered through the Zoom link, which was completely appropriate. That's the way that we had it set up. When you are getting the emails from me to remind you about the new webinars, there is actually a new way to log in, and it's through the WAI website. The reason that I'm doing this is because it actually gives me a really good way to track our attendance. And what I am going to be doing is at the end of each quarter, I'm going to put everyone who attended's name in a raffle, and we're going to raffle off some great WAI swag. Because I want you all to know how much I appreciate you attending and being here, working for your chapters, making your chapters strong and healthy and vibrant, and all of the things that I see coming out of your chapters are amazing. I love it. Our chapter news, by the way, I got a little note from our comms team. They said, we love hearing everything from everyone. It's absolutely wonderful, but we're getting so much that we're actually requesting maybe like 150 words on your events and your articles. So if you see me shorten things down a little bit, that's why. Because as much as I would love to take over the AFW magazine, obviously that's not the purpose. We are there, the magazine is there to give you great information about women in the industry and mentorship opportunities and job opportunities. So there is that slight change on your member and chapter news when it comes in. And I appreciate it. I love seeing how active everyone is. The last thing that I have, if you have not ordered your Girls in Aviation Day activity kits, when you go to the event host page on the web, there is the place to register your event. And then right below that, there is the spot to order your activity kits. At the moment, the events that we have registered and the number of attendees that we have counted are significantly more than the kits that we have ordered. So we want to make sure you have placed that order through the WAI store. Those kits are free. We do ask that you maintain what you feel your manageable number is for your Girls in Aviation Day. So if you feel like you're going to have 300, if you want to ask for 310 kits, we can certainly do that. But if you have planned for 300 and you're ordering 500 kits, we are not going to be able to fulfill this request, because we do have a limited number of kits that are out there, and we want to make sure that every event is getting as many kits as they need to make sure that they've got their activity covered. So just that last word there. Do any of you have anything from me? Oh man, we have good attendance today. There are 13 of you. I love seeing all these little names. That's perfect. Hi, Haley, how are you?
Hi, how's it going?
It's good. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for this. This is my first Leadership Connect, and I like it. It's great.
I saw your name pop up there for the first time, so I had to give you a shout out there. I'm so happy to see you today.
Thank you.
If you would like to welcome Miss Haley here, chapter leaders, they are a brand new chapter that just started within the last month. They are the Great Lakes Aviators of Canada.
Yes.
And they're just doing amazing things. You have a Girls in Aviation Day planned that I just made my eyes go, wow.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
We do. So I'm not on the planning committee for that event in particular, but I sent you a message and you can reply maybe afterwards, just confirming if we have our kit ordered or not. Because if we haven't, I'll push that along. But yeah, thanks for all the support.
Yeah, no problem. Kristen, you have your hand up. Oh, give me just a second. Let me see if we can get you unmuted. You're muted at the moment, Kristen.
Hi.
Kristen, you're still muted, honey. One more time. There we go. Perfect.
There we go. Okay. Hi, sorry, I'm on my phone. I never use the phone on Zoom, and so I'm a little bit moving around here, but I just wanted to thank you for the presentation on conflict resolution. I think that it hit the mark. It's so important, and as we learn more about emotional intelligence and leading from a place of compassion and empathy first, and then moving forward with the communication is so important. So thank you for all of those slides. I can't wait to have this presentation with my executive team.
Oh, perfect. Thank you
Yeah,
so
with our
much
chapter.
for that. I really appreciate it. I watched a lot of webinars.
Oh, well, it shows. You are a little expert on it, and I really enjoyed it.
It's one of those things, you know, I planned it. I was like, this is a great session. And then we got here. I'm like, how do I put this into words? Yeah. You know, how do I put it into a presentation for everyone that makes sense? Because it's something that, you know, we're doing in our natural lives. And I know that, you know, I've been reading books and I've watched webinars and I've gone to, you know, some training on it, but I've never had to put it in a presentation for people. So that made me a little nervous.
Yeah, it was awesome. Well done.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I think we had a few more join us. My very, very last thing that I want to say, I'm going to repeat it again. My computer, my email, all of my Microsoft products have decided to not like me in the last 3 days. I've been very intermittent on being able to get access. At the moment, I'm completely down. So if anyone has emailed me and I owe you communication back, please bear with me. As soon as I am able to get this fixed, I will have you answered and we'll get rolling again. If there's something of super, super, super importance that you need, my phone number is everywhere, but if you need it again, it's 719-235-6170, and you can give me a call at any time. Can't you, Young? We talked last night. So I'll always answer the phone. As long as I'm not on a meeting or I'm not on another call, I'll always get to your phone call. So just bear with me, and I apologize so much for the technical difficulties, but I'm going to stop recording now. I want you to know how much I appreciate you, and you are so wonderful, and I cannot wait to see everything that's going on. I think, you know, we started rebuilding and coming out of like our COVID dip in late 2022, and we are just emerging in 2023. We've got some really exciting things that are going on. As a matter of fact, one of our exciting things is another new chapter. I see Deborah is on here today, and Deborah's provisional contract for their new chapter, Blue Angels Air in India, was just approved yesterday. So we have a new chapter forming in India, and we're so excited to see them. And I want to say thank you for being here today, Deborah. It really, really means a lot. And I hope that this was beneficial for you. And welcome to the Women in Aviation International family. So I'm going to stop recording. Oh, good, Deborah. I'm so glad. All right, we are stopping the recording.